I think we can go ahead and get started then. Councilwoman Berzins, did you want to kick us off?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you. I want to thank everybody for giving up a piece of their Thursday evening. You know, when it gets toward the end of the week, we all get a little needing of me time. So I really appreciate you giving up your time and joining this meeting, because this project is very exciting. We do have a couple of council members who have joined us, and let me introduce them. We have Juan Marcano, the council member of Ward 4. Let's see, I saw another one. Oh, here you go. Councilmember Allison Coombs from Ward 5. We have Yuri Gorloff, who is with our Aurora Economic Development Council. Do we have anyone that's called in? Any council members that have called in? I see some call-in numbers. Okay, we have Dennis Lyon of our Planning Commission. We have Gerald Smeal. Are you there, or is that June? Anyway, they're my old neighbors. I just had to mention them. And that's all, other than working folks that are trying to get this done. Is Mr. Burkill on?
Yes, I am.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you. Thank you for being on. Hopefully you'll get some good ideas tonight. Okay,
well,
yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Councilwoman, and welcome to everybody who's joining us via phone or online. We appreciate your time and interest this evening in the first public meeting for the City Center Vision and Development Framework. This is a project that just kicked off this spring. And this is really our first opportunity to connect with the public and start to get some feedback into this very important project. Okay, next slide. For tonight's agenda, we have a wonderful welcome by Councilwoman Berzins. I'd like to introduce some of our city staff who are working on this project. My name is Daniel Kozanowski. I'm one of the project managers for this project. I'm also joined by Jennifer Roscoe, also with the city, as one of our co-project managers. But we've got a number of staff who are working on this, representing various departments. We've got Mindy Parnes, Melissa Rogers, Andrea Amanek, Bob Oliva, and Frank Boots. Also Chad Harone, Andrea Barnes, and Heather Lamboy. So we're covering a number of departments that are part of this very important project. The agenda for you all this evening, I'd like to give just sort of a brief project overview so you can kind of understand what we're doing, where we're talking about, and how you as the public can provide input at various stages. Wanted to also provide a little bit of an overview of the city center area. Some of you attending may live or work in the area and be very familiar. Some may live elsewhere in the community, so we wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of what's been going on, the history of the area, and what's been going on recently. Really, the heart of the presentation is a series of guest speakers who are joining us from Aurora, and a few neighboring communities to talk about opportunity for future development, for growth, and for the city center to really transition from what it has been to kind of that next level, that next stage in its evolution. So we've got some really knowledgeable expertise to talk about what opportunities Aurora could take advantage of. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a few next steps. And I'll tell you a little bit about how you as the public can provide input throughout the process. Just a couple sort of, I guess, housekeeping notes before we get started. This meeting is being recorded in its entirety. We will post this to the city's website and the project website at the address shown. If you all would like to rewatch it, or if you've got friends or neighbors or coworkers who you think would be interested in hearing what we talk about tonight, we'd love for them to be able to view that recording. If time permits this evening, there may be an opportunity for some questions and comments from attendees. We would want to field those at the end because we do have quite a few speakers tonight. And the other opportunity to provide us some feedback is we'll be sending out an online survey to everyone who attends online tonight's session. We'll also be posting it to that same website. The survey will ask some questions on a lot of the topics that are discussed here tonight. So if you've got some thoughts on any of the specific topics or speakers, or what you would like to see in the City Center area, this will be your first of several opportunities to let us know what you're thinking. Okay, brief project overview. There's really four main objectives of this project to develop a vision and a sort of development concept and framework for the City Center area. The first is to really assess the current conditions, understand some of the opportunities for growth and investment in the area, as well as some of the challenges that growth and opportunity will face. You'll hear a lot about opportunities and current conditions tonight. Of course, City Center is important to the community. It's important to those who live in the area or work in the area, but we really think about City Center as really maybe the heart of the community. And so there's interest, I think, throughout Aurora in what happens here and can happen here. And so we're reaching out through meetings like this, through online surveys and some other ways to engage the public to understand their desire for City Center's future. All of these ideas will be put together into really kind of a vision for how the area can grow and develop. And ultimately, we will be creating a planning document to help guide development and public improvements in the area. If we set out a vision, that's where we want to go. If we do a study, kind of understanding where we are, what the plan does is help us understand how do we get from where we are today to that vision in the future. And so that'll be a really critical part of this project. When we talk about City Center and when we're talking about the area for this project, we want to give you sort of a sense of what we're talking about. The map you see on your screen now shows really, I guess, what you might consider sort of the larger City Center area. It's really at 225 in Alameda, both north of Alameda and south of Alameda. This is really kind of the core to the City Center area. This includes the town center of Aurora, the Aurora Municipal Center, the Metro Center Station, and a number of other properties, shopping, apartments, and so forth, really kind of in this area on either side of Alameda. The focus of the study itself, we'll be looking at this whole area, understanding how it functions, understanding opportunities for growth and development in this area. But a lot of our focus will be on the area south of Alameda, north of Exposition, really on either side of Sable Boulevard, where we'll be doing a lot of our really focused physical planning and really looking at how those areas can connect across Alameda or across Exposition to some of the other developments and neighborhoods in the area. This project was kicked off in April 2020. Since then, we've been doing our homework as staff. We've got some information, some background data and demographics and mapping that we've done. But what you see is August 6th, this is our first online public meeting. This is really the first opportunity for the community to understand what this project is, understand why it's important, and we'll begin to get some feedback from the community as a result of this public meeting. But we'll be hosting a second public meeting later this fall. This will be a much more sort of interactive discussion, community conversation around a number of these ideas that we start talking about today. That one is also planned to be an online format, but like I said, much more interactive. We'd like to invite you all to participate in that when that date is established. After we hear from the public, the project team will start drafting reports and recommendations this fall, and then we'll take those recommendations and that draft report back out to the public. We want to know if what you see in that draft is what you wanted to see. Did we hear you? Does it reflect your desires and your understanding and your vision for City Center? And so we'll do a series of public events around that as well. Okay, shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about City Center. And we can start all the way back in the, start in the mid-70s, 1975, as you see in the photos, when the Aurora Mall opened. At that time, a number of the neighborhoods to the west of 225 were already established, but it was sort of quickly developing neighborhoods really kind of throughout the whole central part of Aurora. To give you a sort of a touchstone, in 1972, Aurora reached 100,000 population. Next slide. And really, since the early times of development in this area, this has been a real priority of the city, city council, and the community. And there's been a desire to think about City Center as really kind of a unique opportunity within the larger Aurora community to provide a mixed-use district with great transportation service and options. In a really well-planned, real city center, perhaps a downtown, an urban area that can really sort of be the heartbeat of the community. And so as we see on the next slide, there's been a number of planning activities that have gone on since the early 80s, looking at various portions of this area, looking at various aspects, whether it's urban design or planning for light rail service, planning for development and redevelopment. So you can see that chronology is pretty long, and that really kind of takes us up to some of the planning that we've done recently. One large planning initiative in the last couple of years was the development of a citywide comprehensive plan, which is called Aurora Places. Some of you attending may have heard of this or may have participated in some of the outreach efforts associated with developing this citywide master plan. And what we found really interesting is that, when we went out to the public, we were reaching out to business owners and residents. We were talking to people from northwest to southeast, really all throughout the Aurora community. If there was one comment that we heard more than any other comments, no matter what part of town we were in, no matter who we were talking to, it was Aurora's a big city. Big cities have downtowns. Aurora should have a downtown. And so there was a lot of interest in this idea of a city center, of a downtown that really kind of came organically from the community. And in a lot of cases, when we would ask folks, that's a great idea. Where was this downtown? Where could this downtown be? More often than not, people pointed at City Center as really that place of opportunity for this new type of district, for this sort of city center to form. The city's done a lot of work, a lot of development in the city center area already. It is definitely a real civic center. It's really the center of government, if you will, in Aurora. You see a few of the public facilities listed that have been built over the last decades, including the Municipal Center in the early 2000s. It's a center for city government. There are county facilities here as well. So there's a sort of a municipal government sort of established here already. City Center is also it's a hub. It's a transportation hub. It's a parks and open space connector. As many of you all are aware, the Aurora Metro Center Station, located on Sable, connects City Center area to the rest of the Aurora, the R line, and that connects it to the rest of the RTV system. There's also a very busy bus transfer center that connects you to local and regional bus lines. So there's a lot of people moving through the area on transit. Of course, I-225 and Alameda are major thoroughfares that are connecting, crisscrossing Aurora and the region as a whole. There's also a number of improvements to parks and trails. The Alameda Underpass at the Highline Canal connection is a recent improvement to help connectivity for the Highline Canal to the Metro Center Station. But there's a number of trails and bike lanes and so forth that kind of come through this area. Of course, any area of town, any neighborhood, any district, the most important thing is people who live there. And so we've got a little bit of data on residents who live within, it's about a 1 mile radius. A lot of this data comes from the Census Bureau. It's looking at people who kind of live in census tracts within a mile of the Metro Center Station. There's over 36,000 residents in this area. Like all of Aurora, this population is very diverse ethnically and culturally. It's slightly more Hispanic and Latino than the city as a whole. And you can see some of the age breakdown as well. If we go to the next slide, please. If you're going to have people, you need to have houses, and there's 13,000 housing units in this area. About 40% of those homes are owner-occupied, and about 60% are renter-occupied. To give you a little bit of context, this is sort of just the inverse of Aurora as a whole, in which about 60-something% of the homes in Aurora as a whole are owner-occupied, and about 40-something% are renter-occupied. You can see the household incomes in the area. There's a little bit of the sort of middle to low on this graph as far as sort of household incomes compared to the city as a whole. And the median household income is a little bit less than the city as a whole, as you can see. However, when we're thinking about City Center, thinking about the people who live here is important, but those aren't the only people who are spending time in the City Center area. The city has available some tools and some data resources that help us kind of understand people who are visiting the area. This area is really attracting people from well beyond just the immediate neighborhoods. What you see on the screen now is a data resource that we have looking at customers for various retail and restaurants in the area. The example here is BJ's Restaurant and Brew House. And what we can see is that their customer base is coming from well beyond the immediate neighborhood. It's coming from really throughout the entire region, and there are people from other outlying communities, Colorado Springs, Loveland, Greeley, that when they come to Aurora, this is a place that they will visit. This slide, again, is BJ's Restaurant. And when we were talking about sort of households and household incomes, what we found through some of this data was that some of the patrons of some of the retail and restaurants in the area tend to have some slightly higher household incomes than sort of the immediate neighborhood. As you can see, BJ's, the largest proportion of their customers has an income of $75,000 to $100,000 a year. This is definitely a little higher than the immediate neighborhood. And we found this trend at a number of area restaurants that they are drawing slightly higher income households. Another group of people who spend time in the city center area are those who work in the area. There's a number of major employers in and around the city center area. What you see here is an example of two, Northrop Grumman and Raytheon, which are located slightly northeast of the city center area. But obviously, those employees, they may be going to lunch, they may be running errands, shopping in the city center area because it is fairly close. And again, with some of these employers, we find that some of the household incomes are a little bit higher or a little bit different distribution than just the immediate neighborhood. I think looking at some of this data, we're seeing that the visitors and the people who spend time in city center are a little bit more diverse in terms of their households than just the people who sort of live in the area. There's been a lot of development interest and recent development in city center area. Probably many of you are familiar with Raising Cane's opened up. It's been very popular. In-N-Out Burger announced and is building one of the early In-N-Out Burgers in the whole region on Alameda. If you've been by the Aurora Mall lately, you've seen the construction, the tear down of Sears and the building of the Field House, which is sort of an indoor recreation center. Also, if you've been in the area, you've seen the Parkside development, which is under construction, and we've got some speakers to talk about that project in a little bit more detail. But there's interest in this area. There's people investing in this area. And so for that reason, if we go to the next slide, we think this is a really great time to be talking about opportunity in the area. There's a lot of market interest in the area. Some of our retail preferences and habits are changing and will continue to change. City center could be where some of these new retail concepts land. And there's a number of new property owners and developers who are interested in the area and bringing a lot of new energy and ideas. So that's why now is really a great time for the community and the city to be talking about city center's future. Okay, you've heard enough from me. Let's listen to some of our local expertise. We've got a series of guest speakers to talk about opportunity in Aurora, but we will kick off with, if we go to the next slide, we're going to kick off with some insights from a couple neighboring communities who have been developing city centers, downtowns for their communities. We'd like to hear a little bit about how they went about doing that and what that's meant for their communities. So we'll hear from the City of Lakewood, a representative talking about Belmar, City of Westminster talking about downtown Westminster. Like I said, we'll hear from two representatives of the Parkside development about why they chose to invest in the area. And then we've got some local speakers to talk about some key topics for Aurora City Center. So with that, we will kick off with Mr. Travis Parker, the Planning Director of the City of Lakewood, and is here to tell us about Belmar.
Good evening. Thanks, Daniel. And it's really exciting to join at this stage of the process. You know, these types of things are once in a generation opportunities for a city. And so it's great at this point where everything's still on the table and the world is sort of open to you. So I'll move pretty quickly through my slides. For those of you that have been in the area, and I don't think I control them, do I? So if you could move to the next slide. the history of this area, and the one after that, the history of this area is that this was originally a standalone suburban mall called Villa Italia. Opened in 1966, flourished for a couple of decades. It was nearly 1.5 million square feet enclosed on 104 acres, so a sea of parking surrounding a major regional mall. Next slide. Beginning in the mid-'80s, this mall started to decline. There was a number of tenants who left and didn't come back, slowing economy, more competition in shopping, and this area saw a gradual decline as a result of the degradation of this mall. So going on to the next slide, by the end, it was only at about 33% occupancy. Only one of the original 4 anchors was still in the mall by the late 90s. So the city had this same discussion that you're having. What should happen in this area? The city wanted to avoid this decline spreading beyond the mall into the surrounding areas. We were talking about the creation of a downtown, building our city center right across Wadsworth from this site. But there were a lot of difficulties, including the spread out property ownership of the site. Next slide. So the plan for Lakewood was to find a master developer for the whole entire area. And rather than seeking out proposals for what the site should be, the city entered into basically a kind of a dating process and finding a developer that met our visions for the site. And after that process, the city settled on Continuum Partners and came up with a plan for a new urbanist area with shared parking and shared amenities and a very, downtown urban style development. And the discovery was that there'd be a ton of public improvements needed. In addition to the streets and the parking garages, there's a lot of site remediation to be done, and ultimately a public-private partnership would be needed. Next slide. Thank you. No, go ahead to that next one. So all of this culminated in a giant financial arrangement between the city and the developer. A lot of public resources were necessary to make this happen at the level that we wanted it to happen and to actually make a big, successful downtown project. So that included a creation of an urban renewal area, metro districts, and the city throwing a lot of future tax revenue into the project. So the city waived 2% of its 3% sales tax, in order for the development to put on a 2.5% public improvement fee. We did TIF district. We put a 50% lodgers tax on hotels in that area. And all of this has gone back over the past 20 years to repaying bonds in this area. So ultimately, we're only about 4 years away from having all of that paid off. Next step, next slide. So the timeline was, I talked about the declining mall. It was in '99 that the arrangement with Continuum was made. They purchased the property. Planning then and redevelopment agreements happened in 2000, 2001, right before the mall closed. Demolition then that year, and then a year of planning, building permits and site planning permits before construction in 2003 began. And the site first opened in 2004. Next slide. So from the beginning, there was never an intent that this would all happen overnight. So this is a slide 4 years after the opening of Belmar. You can see in the center of the slide where a plaza is, and there's a theater, a few major commercial tenants, as well as most of the office and some of the residential. So from the beginning, they built a strong mix of uses, but you can also see a large number of undeveloped sites, a lot of surface parking that is temporary in Belmar. None of the surface parking is meant to be there forever, but is meant to be placeholders. So next slide, what you can see is over the course of the coming years, it filled in. So by 2012, we filled in the second round of big boxes, the Target and the Best Buy, and started putting in additional housing. Next slide. In 2016, you can see a big jump, including a new hotel, a number of new multifamily units and duplex and attached units. And then finally, next slide, in 2020, I don't have an updated aerial, but you can see we're still building out and filling in those parking lots. These 4 boxes represent a hotel, a major new residential building, a restaurant, and a bank. Next slide. So the result of all this has been an incredibly successful development, both from an economic perspective and from a creation of a downtown and urban area perspective. Currently, at least pre-COVID anyway, Belmar was grossing $250 million every year in retail sales. The PIF is generating $5.5 million. The TIF is generating $2 million. And as I mentioned, we're approaching the end of those periods. So in 2024, all of that money will start coming back into the city, and the project's debt obligations will be paid off. Next slide. It's been an incredible success in terms of job creation, over 2,500 jobs, 2 million retail square feet, almost constantly occupied, 375,000 of office space, over 1,000 residential units. I'll talk later at the very end about that balance, but an incredible development with a lot of strong use mix. Next slide. And what you can see here is the leveraging of that initial development. You know, the developers themselves put in $750 million that created $160 million worth of public improvements, including parks, a major urban plaza with ice skating in the winter and outdoor seating in the summer, the parking garages that are a public amenity and shared public spaces. And it really did accomplish our goals of reversing that decline of Lakewood's core area and creating an exciting new destination for our city. Next slide. And the result was the new urbanist vision that the city and Continuum had agreed on from the beginning. So 22 square city blocks with full streets and utilities, public plazas, public parks, built-in stormwater, all the modern amenities of an urban area, sustainability features. Property values within Belmar increased by over 400%, and all along the Alameda corridor here are up nearly 50%. Next slide. And so these next 4 slides are just how the city now uses and feels about this space. So it's a strong destination for retail and entertainment with major retailers and major theater. Next slide. There are vibrant and active public spaces. So all of the public streetscapes are activated with retail or arts uses or restaurants. And so it's a walking destination as well as a shopping destination. Next slide. It's designed with lots of built-in public amenities, the public plaza I talked about that has activities and programming, as well as park areas and dog run areas and other open spaces. Next slide. Residential is a big part of this. So building in a neighborhood was always part of the vision. So in addition to condo units and apartment buildings, a major portion on the east side of the neighborhood is upscale residential row houses. Next slide. And then finally on this slide and the next slide, you can see that mix of uses. So in the downtown, there's a large number of buildings with residential above retail. And on the following slide, you can see there's also a number of buildings with office above retail. So the entire thing was designed to be vertical mixed use with residential and office above the retail. So on my last slide, just a couple lessons learned and some things to think about as we go through this. So you can click through all of them here, but there's 4. First thing to think about is if the project is going to be different than it is now, start the discussion there, right? There will always be people that are afraid of change, but letting people know what's coming and what the possibilities are, you will find a lot more people excited about the possibilities than afraid of the change. Secondly, both the city and your chosen developer or developers it's crucial that you're going to be reliably responsive and collaborative throughout this process. And you're already off to a great start, so I can see that that's not an issue. These final 2, I think, are lessons learned, or I'd say these are things that if we were starting Belmar fresh, we'd do a little differently. First, when Belmar was built, there was concern about the change, and especially along the east side of the development, a barrier was built between the neighborhood to the east and Belmar itself. So rather than making those connections, both pedestrian and automobile, buildings were built to line that side to forever separate those two areas. And now, 20 years later, I think the neighborhood and the city itself regrets that decision. And the neighborhood wishes they had better and easier access to this amenity. And Belmar would certainly benefit from that access to the neighborhood. So being careful not to preclude connectivity with the neighborhood that before the project built thinks that they may not want it. And finally, leaving flexibility for future growth. You saw, there's a lot more office and retail in this than there is residential in Belmar. This was a new project of its kind at the time, and there was a lot of thought given into making sure it was economically viable. And now I think there is a lot more demand for retail and residential, and need for new residential density there that was never planned in at the level that we'd all like to see it today. So creating a plan that's flexible over time and can allow you to adjust those use mixes over time as the market demands and as the development demands are crucial. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Dan.
Great, thank you very much. That's a really wonderful example of a community, a suburban community that has really transformed an important portion of it into something wholly new. And I think Lakewood's probably not going to be the same ever again with the new city center. And it's a work in progress that's been a really major impact on the community. So thank you. Looking a little bit further north in the area, we wanted to look at another community who has been planning and developing their downtown. We're joined by John Burke, who is the Downtown Westminster Development and Construction Manager. And he's going to talk to us about Downtown Westminster and the work that's been done there.
Sure. Good evening, Daniel, and thank you for that introduction. So I'll just start by saying we're right between, I would say, where you are with the city center and where Travis is with Belmar. In fact, we learned a ton, Travis, from your project. Team's done such wonderful work over there. So we've kind of taken some of those lessons learned and tried to apply them on our downtown Westminster site as well. So tonight I'm just going to share with you kind of where we are in that point in time. From the downtown Westminster site. Next slide, please. So very similar, Daniel, I think one of the first statements you said was, that the city center is really the heart of the community. And I think that's what we found with the Westminster Mall. Back in the 70s, 80s, it was a very, vibrant, thriving, literally community gathering place. We had 1 million square feet of retail on about a 100-acre site of this mall. And then, as the demise of many malls these days. In fact, it feels like I have more and more conversations about dying malls with people across the U.S. And, in fact, the Westminster Mall made the cover of Dying Mall magazine a few years back. And so we're no surprise that that's where we are. In fact, I didn't even know that it was such a magazine, but you might subscribe, who knows. Next slide, please. Well, what you'll see is that it wasn't just about the retail. Again, it was about that community, right? There were places, there's a place to be with, going to see Santa Claus, Easter Bunny. We would do outreach with our police department, Halloween, different events. I mean, as a kid growing up in the area, I can say this was the place to go. We'd always just say, hey, let's just meet at the mall. Let's go walk around and go catch a movie or whatever it was. And it really was about that community. And so when we started this journey, it really was a conversation about how do we recreate that community and create opportunities for people to reconnect. And so, next slide, please. What the city did is after we ended up acquiring the mall, one of the first things that we did, kind of similar to learning from Travis and his team at Belmar, is we went out and started to talk to master developers. What I'll tell you is that through that process, and I think Travis kind of hit on this too, which is we don't have all the answers. Nobody's going to have all the answers. You're going to make decisions. You're going to really hope that they work out well. And the long-term play, keeping that vision, it's a 20, 30, 40, 50, 100-year vision for creating a new downtown. It's not, you kind of get out of the mindset of a new retail center that's been gone in 40 years. You're really creating something new that's going to have the stand the test of time. And so when we were talking to master developers, and I'll just kind of briefly highlight the time frames on there. You see 2007, 2010. Many of you remember, right, the Great Recession back then. And there was absolutely no way that a large master developer was going to be able to get the financing to develop that master community in such a way. And so what the city ended up doing is that through very, very hard conversations with our city council and leadership teams at that time, they determined that the only way we're going to keep the vision without just selling out to, say, surface parking lots, low, single store retail developments, big box developments, things like that, the city was going to have to do this themselves. But next slide, please. And so we took some of those concepts, hiring a planning team that was amazing, that could really create what does the downtown look like, going out to the community, doing vision plans, storyboarding with them and saying, how high is too high? Does this height of building look about right? Does this, park facility look okay? Like, what's important to you? And so you start to gather that information, that meeting engagement that, I think was at least a couple of years for us going out, and then really refining and validating and then showing this in a vision of what could be for the new downtown Westminster, always keeping in mind that it's all about vision-oriented relationships. Next slide, please. And so with that, I'm just going to share a few points of time of where we are today. Again, we're not as far as long as Travis. We really started this project in the construction. I think our first construction project in downtown started in 2017. And so what you'll see is that the Alamo Draft House was an opening we had last summer. They came out of the gate. There was a third Alamo Draft House in Colorado. So they have the Sloan's Lake one. They have down in Aspen Grove. This is their third, and we were thrilled. They were doing great, outdoor patio, things like that. Obviously, now we're in this COVID reaction like everybody else. Next slide, please. Another project that was really important to our city council and meeting the goals and objectives for the community is this 8877 Eaton Street, which I know one of the next panelists is Miller White. They are actually the general contractor that focus for the Cole and Mile High development team. And it's 100% affordable housing, deeply affordable, 30 to 80% of the area median income. What I love about this is when you look at the architecture, there's nothing about this that looks affordable. It's actually beautifully designed building by Oz Architecture that was constructed brilliantly by Miller White and is fully occupied with 118 residents on that site. As part of the downtown specific plan, we also require that any capital payment as we go through, and it's a mixture of uses through the project. Next slide, please. This next project is the Ascent Westminster. This one actually just opened, got their certificate of occupancy here this month. Occupying, someone's got their microphone on, might want to mute, might be you, Travis. But so this is a project that was actually a market rate apartment project that had also 22,000 square feet of retail on the main level. And we also, as part of the goals and objectives, wanted to have some the affordable housing components to that. So the city was very invested into this project financially as well, in order to make sure that we got that 10% workforce housing. So what I'll also say is just maybe a lesson learned, but something that we had to be very thoughtful about was that in order to get the vision that the city wanted, the city had to be a partner in investing into these projects financially as well as in the long run. Next slide, please. Next project I'll just highlight is the Origin Hotel. This is a boutique hotel. We candidly didn't think we had one this early in the downtown Westminster site, but they're scheduled to open here this fall. With actually kind of one of the exciting things is the tablet covered bookstore at the main level. And that was a huge play for us just to get, again, everybody that's on here, I'm assuming you've always evolved into the tablet covered bookstore. As a kid growing up here, that was a frequent place we'd love to go visit in downtown, and now they've expanded in different locations. But it's all about, again, that community, that connection, and having a place to go and hang out. And I can't think of a better pairing than a nice 125-key boutique hotel than having a ground floor retailer like a bookstore that you can go hang out, grab a cup of coffee, read a book. And so again, how these things come together is all of those relationships. This was an out-of-state developer that happened to work with an architect that we knew, and that kind of matchmaking put together. And so being very specific about that vision alignment with your developers and architects, engineers, contractors, because together you can all build something amazing. Next slide, please. I'll share a few more projects here. This is the Aspire Westminster project. This is another 226 unit residential with ground floor retail. One of the big plays here is we're actually talking to a market hall operator. Again, learning a lot of successes that Aurora's had with the Stanley Marketplace and Denver with the Levante and the Source. And again, I keep going back to this, but it's all about rebuilding community. It's about creating those spaces and places where people can reconnect with one another in a great venue and space. You know, our center square has a stage, you know, there's lighting, there's sound systems. We want to have a couple hundred events a year in this area that'll have the market hall spill out into that space. So being very thoughtful about open spaces as well. We know Westminster, parks and open spaces is number one criteria for all those who choose to live in Westminster every single time. And so in our downtown, we have 18 acres of parks and open space within that 100 acres place. Making it is because you want to be able to get out of maybe your high rise and be able to walk the dog, walk around, visit with friends at a park, neighborhood pocket park, and that walkability component of that. So these are all very intentional moves as we go forward. You also see on a few of these, we target LEED Silver certified on all the buildings in downtown Westminster, including the center square that has our pavilion that was a LEED certified building, as well as our parking structure. They built a 886 stall parking structure that was certified for a Park Smart, in essence, a green garage certification, again, from that environmental sustainability side of things. Next slide, please. A couple more pictures here, about 4 more. This is one that just started construction. It's called Westminster Row. This is 274 units of mixed-use residential, being 70,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor, also LEED certified. Next slide. It's a nice picture of our center square, again, a pavilion. And one of the things, and we'll talk about this at the end here as well, but it's not about all the upfront capital you put into it, but it's also the long-term operation and maintenance and capital and replacement that you're putting into these projects. Because again, you want that placement to be special and important. This is what that central square looks like for us. You know, it's a 1 acre site, about a $5 million project to put these pieces together in order to strategically put it all into one package. Next slide, please. One of the next moves we're making right now is the ownership residential. All the ones that I've shown you prior have been rental residential and the entertainment with the Elma Draft House. This is our first ownership residential. So we get that mixture of kind of ownership on site, the rental on site as well. So these projects, we got townhomes and actually condos, which we haven't seen a brand new condo building built in Westminster for over 10 years now. I know in other places they've been going okay, but with the construction defects, that's been a big obstacle, and we're super excited to get this out of the ground. We've got a wait list of people that want to own in downtown Westminster, and that's a big deal for us. Next slide. The next one we just got announced here recently was an office building. So this is a brand new spec office building that we got actually over 500,000, probably close to 650,000 square feet of Class A office space that is right now planning with Schnitzer West. They're starting the design work right now, and by this time next year, we should have them breaking ground and starting construction on that. And you know, somebody on this call maybe think, oh my God, are you starting joking to build an office in this COVID environment? I gotta tell you, this is probably one of the best times. Every real estate expert I talk to, yeah, we'll probably see about a 10% reduction in office space utilization. But for a new office building that can be designed right out of the gates with the, COVID-19 in mind, with antimicrobial countertops, ventilation systems with UV, touchless entries, touchless restrooms, touchless elevators, right? Circulation systems, all those things strategically planned in response to this. It couldn't be a better time to be doing this and get out marketing. So we're super excited about getting that daytime use as well with the office that will support some of those on-site retailers. Next slide, please. This is one of the ones I kind of mentioned earlier, which is you always want to invest in. For the downtown Westminster, we took out $30 million in certificate of participation to build the backbone infrastructure. So all the roads, water, sewer, storm water facilities, water quality facilities, parking structure, parks, all that, those amenity first aid packages. The city took that on because we knew if we could set the vision for what would be, we would get that private investment. And right now, again, we're started construction in 2017. We're 3 years in. We have over $300 million of private investment going into this site. And we have our finance team. I know City of Aurora's finance team has talked to our director a few times on kind of the back end financials. And I'll tell you, it looks good over time. Again, from the city, it's a long-term play. And we're willing to stand the test of time to make sure that we have a resilient economics, center core for the city. And that's what this is all about. And then last slide. With that, I just want to say thank you and good luck on your endeavors. I know Daniel and the team have been in conversations as we move forward. Don't hesitate to reach out. We don't have all the answers. We never will. But we're always here as kind of neighbors and partners in the Colorado community. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, John. This was really a great overview of a community with an ambitious vision. Your team and your city clearly have been very methodical and opportunistic in creating that vision on the ground. And it's cool to see so many projects coming out of the ground. And hopefully Westminster's residents are enjoying those. For our next speaker, we're going to take things much closer to home. We have Scott Vollmer and Tim Federgrill with Millender White, and they're representing Parkside Development, which, like I mentioned, is currently under construction on Alameda and Sable. And I'll let them tell you all a little bit about what they have planned there, why they chose City Center to make this investment, and what we can expect to see opening up in the coming months.
Thank you. Tim Frederick with Millender White. Thanks everybody for joining this evening. Very exciting stuff. It's fun to look back at the history out of Belmar and Westminster and think about what could be in Aurora. I think that is the future. All it takes is planning and support of the city and support of the citizens and developers such as ourselves. And I think very much so Aurora can and will have a true city center with time. With that, these things take time, and Parkside City Center is somewhat of a catalyst project, if you will. There are several larger sites around the city center that are much, much larger than what we're doing on our 6 or 7 acre site. But we do think we are setting the tone for what can be. And with that, we represent Millender White, which is a development and construction company based out of the Denver metro area. And we found this site to be particularly compelling due to the vision of what this area could be. It's supported by, tremendous metrics, if you will, drive-by visibility, access to transit, skilled workforce. But beyond that, we could see that there is a lot of undeveloped land directly surrounding our project. And you could see that this, we were going to be part of something greater with time. So with that, could you flip to the next slide, please? All right, here you can see our site. If you're not familiar with where Parkside is, if you happen to be driving by Alameda recently, you may have seen a 5-story building pop up what may have seemed like overnight. We are in the area shaded blue, immediately west of City Center Park. City Center Park has a small pond in it. Just east of that is the Municipal Center. And just to the north is the Highline Canal Trail. Just south is Alameda. And again, we make up the northeast corner of Sable and Alameda. And we see that intersection as, kind of the crossroads of where the city center is. You talked about public infrastructure and public investment earlier. And I just wanted to point out that Aurora has done some great things lately in this area. For one, this tremendous new underpass underneath Alameda Avenue there. You can see where the orange kind of spills into Alameda. That's actually a brand new underpass that has offers connectivity between the north side of Alameda and the new light rail station. So people using the Highline Canal Trail, now can connect directly to the light rail and vice versa. All of the residents who are trying to access the light rail for transit have, a safe and easy passage right now. Additionally, the park, my understanding is that was around a $2 million investment to beautify that park recently. And I got to say, the city's done a tremendous job. Next slide, please. So here you see our site, the mixed-use property. It is a public-private partnership with the city and with the Urban Renewal Authority. With that, we have a lot of the same financial mechanisms that our peers have spoken about earlier in Aurora, in Westminster and Lakewood. We have tax increment finance. We're also utilizing public improvement fees and the levies on the commercial to support the public infrastructure through the site. So it is a true public-private partnership. With that, we needed to listen to what the wants and the needs were of the community, and through our site plan establishment to make this a win for everybody, not just ourselves. So with that, we heard what is missing, and what's not missing is retail and large big box retail, particularly in this area. If you've been through, as you saw earlier, we're anchored by regional shopping centers. So what was not needed was more big box retail. But what's missing is residential living in this core. There's residents in the periphery, but there's no true, TOD adjacent residential community in the direct vicinity of this beautiful rail station. So that, coupled with all of the amenities around us and access to jobs, told us that we should be building residential here. And also, what we heard was needed was retail, but particularly placemaking retail. A lot of the stuff that you would see at Belmar and at downtown Westminster, these are primarily local operators, smaller shops, on average about 1,000 square feet. So they're at price points that local operators can afford. And we're really excited about how the retail is shaping up at Parkside. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Scott Vollmer here in a minute so he can tell you more about what we're doing out there. But it's a concept where the whole is more than the sum of the parts. All the concepts you've heard from these other fine communities, just on a micro scale. Vertically mixed use. We have ground floor retail on our residential building, residential above. We have structured parking. That structured parking is wrapped by residential, so you're not staring at a blank parking structure. Then we have some outer retail buildings fronting the site. You can see on the west side of our site is also the RTDR line. And on the east side is the park and underpass that I mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. Here is it's actually a rendering. The city has to produce this as part of our entitlements. They wanted to know from the planning department and the officials on the 5th floor, what would this project look like? Can you see rooftop appurtenances? Are you going to see a bunch of condensing units? And this kind of lays up our building kind of center east on the screen there. It's just purely a rendering, but it's, again, a 5-story building, ground floor retail, and 4-story residential above on the western face. Terrific mountain views. It's something that this new downtown will benefit from, is given we're a little bit further off the Front Range, the views just get better and better as you go east. And I think anything above the 2nd floor, actually even starting at the 2nd floor, benefits from mountain views at our property, which is kind of surprising. We thought we'd be, maybe 4th or 5th story, but just speaks to the compelling positioning this larger area has. And we're lower, than a lot of the adjacent properties. So I think everybody else will benefit from that same view. Next slide, please. So I mentioned our creative retail mix, and Aurora has a lot of residents. But thing we sort of identified what was missing is this destination shopping, culture, and experience. You have Stanley Marketplace on the far western flank, but there's kind of a vacuum in the core, and we think the rest of the sites surrounding us will only build upon what we started. But again, we're thinking that we're going to be setting the tone here with what this can be. And I'll turn it over to Scott Vollmer so he can speak a little bit about our retail concepts and how we're trying to position this community as something forward-looking, exciting, and vibrant.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Hi, everyone. This is Scott Vollmer from Leonard White. I'm overseeing some of the strategic placemaking and retailing here at Parkside. I'm very excited about this project, and kind of to piggyback off of what Travis and John talked about earlier. I think we realize being kind of the trailblazer in the neighborhood to bring the town core together. We're going to have to take some risks, and we're going to have to identify, some draws and anchors within the district that kind of creates that vibrancy. Millennials and people of all ages are actually looking for in a post-COVID world or pre-COVID world. But, it's about gathering, it's about community, it's about connecting with people. I previously worked with Edens back in Washington, D.C., doing a large food hall project in development called the Union Market District. And I'm very excited to take on this opportunity with Melinda White here in Colorado. So my focus has really been on, trying to create opportunities for entrepreneurial businesses to prosper. And Tim had mentioned this earlier, but, the sum of the totals better than the parts individually. I think I messed that up. But, I think the retail in today's market has to be cognizant of, the competition, the fast-paced environment in the retail world. And you'll find a lot of the growing retail businesses are actually creating more of a brand exposure point, and they're looking to partner with developers for properties that really draw community in. So with Parkside, we are looking at creating a mix of retail that satisfies that live, work, play environment. So on this slide, you'll see just kind of some concept restaurants that are primarily chef-driven. These will be taking place in our collective eatery. We're calling it, I believe, the Eatery at Parkside. So we'll get into a little bit more detail of that in a minute. In addition, we're looking at wellness and fitness brands, yoga studios, Pilates gyms, yoga boutique stores attached to the studios. So really some creative retail. And then unique stores as well, things that, are kind of a curated selection of products that shoppers are looking to go into. This model and these retail establishments are really focused on higher dwell times, which is what we want our site to be. If you're a resident in one of the 216 units, you might be coming here 2 to 3 times a day. We're hoping 30-minute stays for each individual. And so by capturing that walkability with the light rail, the connectivity to the Highline Canal Park, we really hope to expect to see your bikers on the weekends, your travelers, your families, finding a place to really meet with a group of people, provide some ample outdoor seating, and some reasonable and approachable food options. If you go to the next slide, please. This slide is showing a little bit of the ground floor of the mixed-use building. So this will be the phase 2 coming online probably late 2021. So you have 216 units above. First floor is going to be kind of targeting a few different ideas. We are speaking with a few co-working operators, potentially trying to piggyback off that kind of office leasing model that John was alluding to earlier. I think in this COVID world, more people working from home, we do expect to see some of the co-working tenants continue to grow. So we have about 10,000 square feet of ground floor retail. And also the first floor of this parking lot is actually going to be available for retail parking. The upper floors will be for residents. So this provides a great amenity, so ample parking in excess of what you see in the rendering in the previous slide that's available right in front of the retail. You go to the next slide. In this slide, we got the inline retails on the west side and north facing side. I'm sorry, yes, north facing. We have traditional kind of inline retail, but smaller customizable spaces. So we are, basically looking to occupy definitely more brick and mortar type establishments. And the building B, which is there on the west side, right on the corner of Stable and Alameda, will butt up into the collective patio space. That's the building that we are targeting for the eatery. And as you can see, we've racked this building with 5 to 6 tenants, including a central bar operator, where the patrons for the different food concepts will benefit from a communal seating area. We'll be providing landlord amenities, common area bathrooms, and in dealing with food halls in my past, I think one of the big struggles is the size and footprint. And so even in today's growing delivery world, these spaces are being targeted by several existing food hall operators, a few new businesses, food trucks, essentially. No real franchises or chains. we are looking at all kind of local driven concepts, and this space will then provide them their own capacity to cook within their space, have additional storage, some kind of counter and ledge seating, but then ultimately spill out into the common area where the bar is and the exterior seating area as well.
I was going to add, Scott, you know, as far as, you know, our leasing activity to date, it's been kind of interesting what's going on in the market. And is, you know, you read in the press, you know, what's happening with the retail scene and retail dying, and you know, everybody's ordering their groceries, ordering their produce, and all their daily supplies. We found the opposite to be true, particularly for our small format retail. So the smaller spaces have by and large filled much more quickly than any of the other spaces. And I think it just speaks to a shifting paradigm in retail. The future of retail is, I think, more challenging to do. It needs to be more thoughtfully done. But it is still building momentum on our site, which is extremely exciting. We're very grateful with the tenants that we've locked to date, and I just thought this screen kind of shows it all on the different sizes of proposed spaces. Those spaces that we've cut into approximately 1,000 square foot retail space have leased up very, very quickly. So kind of interesting side note.
Yeah. Next slide. So these are some basic statistics from a Customer in Wakefield article regarding food halls, and just really talking about the kind of evolution of the way we eat. I think in Aurora you do see a lot of national chains and franchises. You know what you're getting when you get there. You're getting value, but I think to Tim's point, a lot of these smaller footprint, spaces have tight margins, and the restaurant industry is a challenge. And I'm a firm believer in the successful food hall model. It's simple done right, where your tenants are focused on their production. They're not bothered with additional building responsibilities and costs associated with occupancy that we're able to take on as a landlord and help provide them a more focused platform to focus on the food. And with that, I think the customer base in Aurora, as you're seeing throughout other projects and even in the residential side, is people are looking to go out more. People are geared towards having a more diverse palette of different food options. So you're able to go into a collective eatery, know that you're getting quality ingredients, freshly cooked, and you're able to provide various options for the parties that you're with. And hopefully eventually we'll be all sitting at tables of 10 or 12 and not concerned. But, in these days, the food halls are still buzzing. We are still seeing some great traction for these businesses focused on everything from, prepared family meals to go to, some more technology that's helping operators take orders on the fly, have people text message when their food's ready so they're not sitting inside, congregating in one area. So we're excited to be implementing this model in Parkside. And next slide, please. This is just kind of a little high-level look at the space. As you can see, we have 3,000 square foot retailers over here, south side, central bar in the middle, and 2 retailers over on the west side. These retailers will have direct patio access to the Parkside communal patio area, which is going to have ample outdoor seating and dining options. We're hoping to really program this space with something like maybe movies at night, live music once in a while, really creating that community aspect for people to come together. And next slide, just kind of highlighting a couple of the different concepts. Right now we have interests from various restaurant groups and concepts from Edgewater Marketplace to first-timers. Commissary kitchens have been a big focus of our leasing strategy, bringing together a good, healthy mix that's providing 3 meal periods throughout the day. We do think the municipality buildings across the street really draw a nice daytime foot traffic for office workers. In fact, there's really no great options without crossing Sable and going out for lunch will be actually something that employees over at the municipality will be able to walk to. And with the growing residencies and demand for future development, our tenants are very excited to see what's coming in the downtown area. And then lastly, Tim, did you want to touch on the arts and culture piece?
Yeah, how about I do the public and you can do building B? How about that?
Sounds great.
So, as part of building within the city center area in Aurora, you're actually required to include public art within your development. It's a specific quantity based on a percent of the cost of stuff you're building. As a real estate developer, you hate spending money where you don't think you need to, or that it doesn't serve, nuts and bolts utility. And, you're trying to produce the best value for the customer. And so you're trying to, with that, save on costs. And so oftentimes in a project, art gets left behind. It's sort of on the list until the very end when things go, more expensive than you thought they're going to, and then it gets cut from the budget. Fortunately, Aurora is forced the hand here, and everything that gets built in this district, by law, will be an artful place. We've got a pretty compelling art program. We're spending over $300,000 in art on our site, and in retrospect, after having gone through the process with the city, we're grateful, frankly, that this initiative was put in place, and we think it just adds to the branding of our project in the larger city center as a whole. It's exciting stuff. As we got into it, we had more and more fun in it, and those are some of the most exciting meetings I've ever been a part of, talking about, being able to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on art is something that very few people get to do in their lifetime. And so very, very cool program we've got in place. In the Central Plaza sort of patio area, right next to the collective eatery that Scott was speaking about, is going to be our, a large-scale public art feature that includes a paver system that is sensitive to both sound and touch and is embedded with LEDs. Those LEDs are linked to a motherboard and have software that control them. So it's basically a widget that you can reprogram to do a multitude of different things. So that artist, their first feature that you'll be able to experience on this patio is called the Light Pond. And if you walk across this patio, it'll produce the effect of walking on water. So ripples will emanate out from where you're walking. Somebody else can walk across from the other side of the patio. Your ripples will interact. We're also going to have the LEDs run up trees in the middle of that plaza. You'll see these ripples race up the trees. But with time, we envision this staying fresh and being reprogrammed. Warranty and keeping money for maintenance is also part of Aurora's program. So you're certain that the system is maintained. So we put a ton of effort into this one. It's something that the entire community can come and experience. It's on district-owned property, so it's by description public. And it's right there at the corner of Sable and Alameda, which has over 60,000 cars a day driving past it. We think this is going to land in some pretty cool publications. It is one of a kind. We also have a multitude of other stuff going on the site. Just large scale murals. I believe one's close to 200 feet long with some very notable artists on the Denver region and nationally. We also are doing some cool stuff on the eatery at Parkside. Scott, you want to tell them more about what we're doing there?
Sure, yeah. Next slide, if you want, we can just show an update of current construction conditions. But on that building B on the corner, we do want the retail to pop, so we are looking to kind of create a little bit different of a street view from the Sable side, where we're doing a little bit of a mural above this on the stucco that kind of creates a vibe to the building that kind of speaks to the art and creativity of the entrepreneurs and restaurant chefs inside. And basically wrapping that same kind of imagery on the front, where we'll have the primary signage and some portrait art as well. And then also on the south-facing wall by the plaza and Light Pond, we have a great artist from Denver doing a mural as well there. So really trying to create that buzz. We're also looking at doing some interior murals as we get closer to opening. Just really creating something for people to have a memory in front of, to create some placemaking and a sense of place within the identity of the neighborhood. So really excited about these art projects and really excited to share the vision with you guys. I think one more slide here shows the plaza, and I think we can wrap it up.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Tim. This is a really exciting project that brings together so many of these different concepts in design and programming and architecture and activity. There's a lot on this site. And that is a really great example of how much you can do if you've got a vision and a mission and you've got these concepts and you've got like a very clear direction that you want to go in. So this is a great I guess, first mover in the city center area. It really sets a great tone for future development. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Thanks to the city for your support.
Our next speaker is going to be Kevin Hogan. I haven't seen Kevin on the call yet. So Kevin, if you're here, let us know. But otherwise, we'll move on to our next speaker is Bob Oliva. Bob is with the City of Aurora. He is our Senior Commercial Development Manager, and his expertise is in retail and restaurants. And that's the topic he's going to give us a little bit insights into. So take it away, Bob.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, next slide. All right, first I wanted to talk a little bit about the overview of the retail opportunities that we have at our new Aurora downtown. And when we talk about retail, I wanted to get into what are we talking about when we talk about retail. And retail can be divided into these four categories right here. You have your classic retail stores, a lot of what you would see over at the Aurora Mall. Would be the types of apparel retailers, shoe stores, accessory players, that type of retail. But there's also a couple of new styles of retail that are popping up, and we expect those to continue to grow. There is the new buy online, pick it up at the store concept, which is sort of a combination of retail and fulfillment center. Bed Bath & Beyond just announced that they are converting 25% of all of their stores to a fulfillment center, which would allow you to buy online and go pick it up at the store. The next version of that are called showrooms, and showroom stores are more of a store that you would shop at the store, but when you buy it at the showroom, you're really buying it online and it's getting shipped from a distribution center to your home. Showrooms are relatively new. They're very big in Asia, and in those places, you either walk into a showroom where you can touch and feel what you're going to buy, and then there's a QR code, and you just scan the QR code, you buy it, and as you're leaving the store, it's coming out of a fulfillment center and heading to your house. And it's a race to see who gets it back to the house first, whether your product shows up first or whether you do. That's a few years out, but these are the two ways that retail are trying to compete with Amazon. And so we're gonna hopefully see some of this. At least we have a vision of seeing some of this in this project. Of course, there are restaurants, and restaurants are divided up into a number of different types of restaurants. Your classic full-service sit-down restaurant, we expect to see a few of those. But the new trends are heading more towards QSR restaurants, quick serve restaurants, which are kind of a blend between quick serve, kind of the Chipotle model, where you go up to a counter and you purchase something, but then you go sit down and a runner brings it to you. And then, of course, fast food also gets a little mixed up in the quick serve business. We expect more quick serve players here than fast food because this is a more urbanized project. Of course, we expect to see a bunch of niche operators, which are the guys that sell one or two concepts out of a restaurant, like coffee or ice cream or smoothies. And the food halls are on such a roll right now that we wouldn't be surprised if a food hall also pops up on this project. Of course, we expect this project to also have the kind of services that you would see in a mixed-use downtown area. So this would be like the hair salons, the dry cleaners, the tanning salons, and all of those types of services. They might not be right on Main Street, but they might be one or two segments off of Main Street. But they are part of an overall project like this. And of course, entertainment. Entertainment is a big buzzword right now, and it really covers everything from a person strumming a guitar at a coffee shop to a full-blown amphitheater or an event center. We have not had a lot of conversations about the entertainment that are proposed for this project. There's a lot of things that are changing right now. I'm not sure that indoor event centers are going to be all the rage as they were in the past. But of course, there is the concept of entertainment. And entertainment started a long time ago. Dave & Buster's was one of those players about 25 years ago that decided to build an entertainment center around their restaurant. And so it is a well-disguised restaurant with lots of entertainment. Most people think it's just an entertainment center. A much more recent version of entertainment would be like Punch Bowl Social, where it was much more interactive social experiences while you're still in a restaurant bar atmosphere. So these are kind of the visions that we have for this project. I know that this all works together. I'll show you in a second with the other parts. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so what's our vision for this project? You've heard a number of players talk about a sense of place. And when you take a look at these pictures, these are the types of things we're talking about. These projects have an excitement to them. There is a vision. You can see that you want to walk this project. It draws you down these roads. It has this illusion of activity even when there's no activity. It's fantastic design, and this is very walkable. These are also self-contained projects. We expect this large project to be sort of live, work, play, in that if you live on this project, you should be able to go downstairs and shop and eat and entertain yourself on the project. And if what you don't find here, you will find on the other three corners. We expect this to be a regional draw. The placer data that you saw earlier in the presentation shows that we are drawing from 7 to 10 miles. Normally, you would expect a sort of a neighborhood center to draw from about 3 miles, but we're drawing from a much larger area, and we think this project will sort of cap off everything that's happening in the four corners. Next slide. Okay, it is going to be a downtown neighborhood, and so it will have an urban feel to it. What you're seeing here is kind of a vision of some other projects that have been in the area, but we want you to get this vision in your mind that it is an urbanized project. And the four-corner connectivity is key to this. And if you take a look at the four corners that we currently have, we have basically the four different types of retail that have basically been all of the retail in this country in the last 40 years. You have the regional shopping mall, you have the power center with a lifestyle center in the front of it, you have a very modern mixed-use project in Parkside, and then here comes our downtown. And that sort of caps off the whole area. This should be the regional draw for the area, this whole area combined. Next slide. When you're building a project like this, a lot of times people talk about having an anchor tenant. And if we think about an anchor tenant that we would love to see on this project, it would probably be a grocer that would complete the idea of live, work, play. You do not have to leave the project every time you want to go to a grocery store. And these are visions of urban grocery stores. And so thank you, Dan, for going out and finding these pictures. But this is more of our vision of the type of projects we would see, the type of anchor tenants we would see. So I'm pretty sure that's my last slide. Just a brief overview, and I appreciate it. We're going to have a survey at the end of this. Please, we would love to hear everybody's feedback on what they want in this project. There are some very detailed questions about what people are looking for. Please fill out the surveys and get them to us as soon as possible. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for the overview of really the breadth of what retail is. When we talk about retail, some of the new concepts that are very popular and some familiar uses that have taken a new spin. It's really interesting to keep up with retail and restaurants and how quickly that changes, and think about how City Center might be home for some of these new concepts and draw people from Aurora and well beyond. I wanted to talk just briefly about housing. You've heard about housing in Belmar, at downtown Westminster. It's an important part of a mixed-use city center downtown district. If you could go to the next slide, please. The way I think we're looking at downtown is a place of housing options. We envision the new housing that is part of this downtown city center development to really complement the existing housing stock in the area, in the surrounding neighborhoods. We have some wonderful apartment complexes and condos in the area, and we have some wonderful established neighborhoods sort of on the periphery of this. And I'm thinking about housing options. What could we add to this? What other options would people like to live in, other neighborhood experiences and housing unit experiences? And so I think we're thinking about both for sale condos or townhomes, but also rental options, really just trying to appeal to the real diversity of households and individuals who may want to call Aurora City Center home. There's an opportunity to provide a real diversity of prices, whether that's rents or sale prices in the area. I think the diversity of incomes can really support some new exciting retail and entertainment options. I think we're looking at some of these formats that have different types of units, different designs, all really within a walkable neighborhood that has really all the convenient access to all the things that City Center offers, the food halls and the plazas and the events and so forth. And so I think we're integrating housing into this whole mix will be really, really important as we develop the plan. If we go to the next speaker, Yuri Gorloff is the Vice President of the Aurora Economic Development Council. He's going to provide us some thoughts on office and employment opportunities for City Center area. Did we lose you, Yuri?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Sorry about that. Council member Versions was right. It's always different. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to share our thoughts. For those of you who aren't familiar with what we do, we're out there trying to attract and recruit and retain primary employers to the city, into Adams and Arapahoe counties. So we're out there talking to tenants in a couple of different industries, aerospace and defense, and bioscience, and industrial users, advanced manufacturers, logistics companies, e-commerce companies, and certainly, last but not least, office professional services sort of tenants that are looking to come into the area. And I really appreciate the history. I think one part that I would add to this site and thinking about the other municipalities and what they've gone through is the willingness of not only the development community and the developer that comes on board, but the landowner that was there either previously or is in some shape or form active. And we went out a couple of years ago when the Opportunity Zone program hit the federal tax laws that we wanted this area to be designated as that, to find some outside investors, because the site had been sitting fallow for 15 years. And 15 years is a long time, as we all know, as cycles come and go. And I think that's why we're seeing, this conversation happen in 2020 in COVID times versus a long time ago and probably being activated by now. But moving on, I think on a positive note, the trends we're hearing and that we're seeing during COVID and in pre-COVID is that people do want to be in a place, and they want to have a sense of that place and that camaraderie and that experiential sort of living and working. And so, you know, the light rail stations that have come up before Metro Station went up a couple of years ago, the trend has been retail and residential sort of in tandem, and then the employers coming in. If you look at Bellevue Station, Yale Station, and obviously now coming up with, you know, Westminster and a couple of others across town and going west on those lines, I think you'll see the same, and we'll see the same. I think we need some housing product, as Daniel mentioned, some others mentioned. That's critical to really change the dynamic. And Daniel, to your point about this being an opportunity in a transition sort of site, it's really important to change some of those income levels by getting in maybe younger folks, maybe that are moving into the area, into Colorado. We're going to continue seeing that's a big trend. We're going to continue seeing populations migrate from denser communities, from the coasts, from more expensive communities to here. And I think that's a great opportunity to incorporate a diverse base of folks to really change the dynamic of what we're seeing develop. And so companies are asking us, and especially were before COVID, about where people were coming from. And so I wanted to point out, I think it was Tim that pointed out there's 60,000 cars or vehicles a day going on back and forth on Alameda. Those are huge numbers. I'm sure Westminster and Belmar see about the same, and that's what really drives this visibility of it. I know Aurora Mall has been doing well, given the circumstances even, and field houses going in. But we really see the area beyond Parkside, beyond Metro Center, beyond the mall, and including City Place on the northwest side of Sable and Alameda's intersection as an entirety, as the study area shows. And we really think that it even might incorporate the Second and Abilene station and that connectivity and bring that into the fold. And we really think that companies, again, in the industries that we are strong in Colorado, in the Denver metro area, in Aurora, those aerospace companies, they're not going away. They're going to need space. They're going to be distanced perhaps in the near future for the next 12 to 24 months, maybe even longer, who knows. But the trends about touchless, clean, HVACs, all of those technologies, the LEED certification sort of product that Westminster was mentioning, those are the product types that we're hopeful to get here and land here. And yeah, I think it was also Westminster that mentioned heights and getting that right. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a 15-story building to really kick something off. It could be a 5-story office building that could sit in the right place, depending on elevation, depending on how it integrates into the site. And so developers and employers also think about all of that. So this has been a really great dialogue, I think, or at least shedding light on what's possible. We are certainly bullish on getting great primary employers in that would utilize the light rail, that would utilize the trail system, that would be, part of our target industries, whether it's aerospace or bio or health related or other professional services that would land here and realize the potential of being in a place and having that sense and having the amenities nearby and the connectivity, the visibility, and all of the above. So hopefully that's helpful to the conversation. And again, thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you very much, Yuri. I appreciate those thoughts and those insights into office and employment. The city and its partners have put a lot of investment into transportation infrastructure, public facilities. You were talking about creating a very exciting and active mixed-use destination, and it's great to hear that that's an amenity. That's time well spent if we're trying to attract employers as well. So thank you very much. Our next speaker is Bruce Dalton. Bruce is the president and CEO of Visit Aurora, and he wanted to share some insights into the hospitality, travel, and entertainment sector. I'll turn it over.
And good evening, everyone. For just information, Visit Aurora is contracted by the City of Aurora to be the sales and marketing arm of the city and promotes tourism for the City of Aurora. I am going to share one slide and really just specifically focus on the tourism aspect of a Center City project like this.
Let's see if we can get, Randy, can you help us we'll put down our presentation and we'll share control with Bruce.
Yep, just 1 second. Okay. Being one of the last speakers, it won't be more than like 45 slides or so. No, but,
Bruce.
all right, Bruce, you should be able to do that now. All right, can everyone see the slide?
Not yet.
Go ahead and share your screen, Bruce. All right, I am. The little box at the bottom. I apologize, I thought I had this. The little tray. There you go. How's that?
Perfect. Yeah, we can see it.
All right. So really just focus on tourism in general. And I think that one of the things that I've heard this evening, and I obviously know very well, is that several other cities in the Metro Denver area, as well as Denver, are investing in projects like this City Center project. And we're all competing for tourism and sales dollars. And just to give you an example of the value of tourism for the state of Colorado, and I think I just lost it. You see it still? Can you hear me?
We do hear you. I think you went one slide too far, Bruce.
Okay, let me go back.
Your back arrow.
Anyway, I'm just going to roll on with information without the slide. But the recent trends in Colorado and the travel industry, total direct spending in Colorado during 2019, and these are obviously COVID numbers or pre-COVID numbers. We feel like that once a vaccine can be widely distributed, the travel and tourism industry will start to see a major recovery around the summer of 2021. And as I said, the total direct spending in Colorado during 2019 was over $24 billion by visitors into our state. The direct travel spending supported over 181,000 jobs and earnings of over $7.4 billion. Air travel to Colorado destinations was up 8.1% in 2019 over 2018. And the Colorado travel industry generated about $1.5 billion in local and state tax revenues in the 2019 calendar year. This represents approximately $707 per tax revenue per household in the state. And most importantly, while travel and tourism is important throughout the state, over half or 59% of all travel spending occurred in the Metro Denver area. And with our location near DEN, where most of the travelers come to the state, and by fact, the average traveler that comes into the state of Colorado spends 4.4 days, which is significantly longer than other states that are visited throughout the country. So we really feel like that, you know, as we're selling and doing our job and attracting visitors to our city, it's important to know that we're competing against places that really have great center cities, including Chicago, New York, places like San Antonio that have the Riverwalk, but also really cool destinations like Austin, Texas, and Nashville, Tennessee, which really have successfully put together center cities and are attracting major meetings and conventions. And that's who we're competing with. We represent 33 hotels, including the Gaylord Rockies Resort and Convention Center. And we really feel like that one of the most important things and one of the questions that we are frequently asked is what's there to do in our city. And having a place like the Center City project for people to come and spend time and spend money would be a great asset to our destination. So we really feel like that this Center City project is really the most important thing and project in the city of Aurora. We feel like that if we can get people to our city and allow them to spend money in places like Center City, then we'll generate additional tax revenue, which will benefit everyone, including the citizens of Aurora. We love this project and the way it's developing, and we're proud to be a part of the project and the committee to support it.
Hey, Bruce, if you could stop sharing your screen then. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bruce. That's certainly a lot of opportunity in drawing visitors to Aurora, and a lot of untapped appeal that I think a project like this could really add to visitors to Aurora and really be a wonderful draw. In addition to providing activities for local residents and employers. We appreciate everyone's time. I just wanted to inject very briefly one last sort of concept. I think we've been talking a lot about development and land uses and tenants and that type of thing. But really, when we're talking about a downtown district, I think we're talking about a place that's really, really cohesive. And one of the ways that a group of developments can become a place is through branding, marketing, and organization. Communities all over the country, and especially downtowns, oftentimes come up with really focused and creative marketing programs. We can get some slide up and show some of these concepts. I think pulling together all the ideas, pulling together the community's vision into some visual concepts and some slogans and some ideas and some marketing can really create a wonderful and identifiable place. Like I said, downtowns across the country often undertake this type of activity. Commercial districts as well. We have a wonderful local example of on Havana Street, the Havana BID, that organizes the businesses in the Havana corridor. They're an advocate for business and business growth. They operate events and shared marketing, and really turn Havana from a place where there's a lot of places to shop to a real district. And I think when we're thinking about City Center, that type of marketing, branding is a really important thing to understand. And making sure that branding, that idea really reflects the community's vision of why this place is wonderful, why Aurora is dynamic and active. So go to the last one more slide. And it's definitely visual logos and slogans and so forth like that are a big part of this, but also programming and events. That's what brings people in a lot of cases to some of these areas. Downtowns and cities across Colorado and across the country often have very focused and deliberate events and programming for their downtown areas. You see just a handful of events from downtown Fort Collins, but they're providing regular programming that bring people down to their downtown to spend time, spend money, and connect with each other. There's a real opportunity for City Center to take on some of these ideas. And so that wraps up our speakers for tonight. Thank you so much for your time. Just a couple final notes. For more information about this project, you can visit our project website, which is auroragov.org/citycenter. We'll be posting a link to this recording. So if there are friends or neighbors that you think would be interested in listening to this, please send them there. We'll also be posting an online survey. If you're attending online, we will distribute this to you via email, but anybody who's interested can come to the website, fill out this online survey, and that really starts the conversation about what does the community want, what are its priorities, what do you as Aurora wish you could do in City Center. This is really kind of the first opportunity to be heard. Like I mentioned, we'll be doing a second, much more interactive discussion public meeting later this fall. Stay tuned to project websites or any of the city's social media to get information on that when that comes available. I wanted to, before we maybe have time for just a couple of questions, I wanted to ask Councilwoman Bersens if she had any closing remarks.
No, this was wonderful. It was very informative, and to see what other cities have done was great. But, you know, we, of course, the Metro Center starting from dirt, you know, we don't have to move anybody out or change anything. This is step one, but it was good to see the other Parkside, and I'm anxious to see what changes are going to be made in the Target area and around the mall area. So, no, this was very informative, and I want to thank all of our speakers. I appreciate you giving your time tonight to let us know what your city has done. So, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And thank you to all who've attended. I know we ran a little bit long, so we have time for maybe just a couple of questions.
Hey, Daniel, maybe
yes.
we should tell folks how they can ask a question if they
yes.
can, you know, raise their hand by hovering over your name. You can raise your hand. If you're on the phone, if you hit *3, we will see that you want to ask a question. So we'll take phone calls as well as anybody else who wants to come in through WebEx and ask a question.
We'll take questions. If there's any comments or if anybody
Daniel,
something you're particularly interested in, we'd love to hear about that as well.
We do have one person who has got their hand up. I don't see if they have a microphone. I'm going to go ahead and allow them to speak if they have a microphone active. We have a Maggie Bolton with a question.
Sure. So for the development that Melinda White is doing, I know that there will be residential in there. Do you anticipate having affordable housing in there? Or do you also anticipate perhaps having active adults?
You know, we looked at both. You know, there's different financing models for both of those product types. What we determined is that, you know, the most needed at this site was kind of this vibrant retail mix. Not that either one of what you just mentioned is ultimately in need in this area. And we, very much looked at all three models. This is just what rose to the top for this specific site. I do know that immediately to the south of this site, you've got a vacant 60 acres. There's a lot of developable land there that's going to include multiple phases of, and I've heard, you know, whispers that they may include one or both of those uses, and look forward to seeing what else crops up in the neighborhood.
And that's a great point that you know, if we're trying to provide housing in an area for a really diverse population, affordable housing is a part of that puzzle. Housing for active adults or seniors is part of that. And I think when we're looking at the city center area in a whole, it's sort of a portfolio. What are all the options that someone who's interested in living in the area can find? And so if it's not in one specific project, there may be another project that's able to accommodate some of those. Thank you for the question.
We have another question. Aurelie Alcazar, I apologize if I didn't pronounce it right. I will unmute. I don't have a microphone active. You have your hand up, but I don't see an active microphone. Daniel, I'm not seeing any more questions or any more hands up.
Okay, there's some written questions. I think we saw one that was asking about train horns and their impact on the Parkside development, and if they're impacting the art or the project. I don't know if Tim can speak to that.
Interesting you speak about it affecting the art. We may actually have one installation of the art that activates based on the train horn. We've seen different installations across the country that have that kind of effect that, it can sound on the chime or the horn, but, we might have some sort of effect where this thing kind of flashes or lights up with a passing train. So to the opposite, we thought it would be a cool way to engage the TOD and embrace it. You are on a train line, and so if you live here, you're going in knowing that you live on a train line, and it's got pros and cons. The pros, we believe, outweigh the cons, and attracts a certain type of person who wants to live here and believes in transit and wants to utilize that transit. But yeah, undoubtedly, it is more noisy than if the train wasn't on your site. It's not, weirdly, when you are in the presence of the sound on a daily basis, it kind of drops into the background. We've heard that over and over from our folks working in the trailer out there for 16 months now. After about a month, it kind of goes into the background noise, and you can't, frankly, it's not a nuisance, if you will. It's just part of the cadence of being in the city center.
Great, thank you. We had another question in the Q&A chat. Will the Aurora Mall remain as is, or will the mall also be redeveloped at some point? That's not the only person who has that question. The Aurora Mall is a huge economic engine for the community, and preserving that sort of economic impact in the community is important. However, I think, like all redevelopment projects, like all districts, places evolve over time. And I think what you're seeing at the mall with the demolition of the Sears building and the building of the Field House is maybe a first step in that evolution of the mall. I know we are working with representatives of the town center in Aurora, as well as the other surrounding commercial properties as part of this project to better understand what are their near-term and long-term plans for their property. So I think as we work through this planning process, we may get some insights into sort of the direction that the mall may be evolving into over time. But it will continue to be, this area will continue to be a commercial retail center. And, however that property evolves to keep that going, we'll see, but that'll definitely be part of our plan.
And there are no further questions that I see.
Okay. Well, thank you all for your time. If you do have questions after you sort of absorbed a lot of information that we gave you today, please go online and fill out that online survey. There's a lot of questions about the topics that we discussed tonight. We'd love that feedback. That'll help shape that second public meeting. If you just got other questions or comments, feel free to email at the address shown there, citycenter@auroragov.org, or call that phone number. That rings on my desk, so you'll talk to a real person, or at least leave a message for a real person. I'm happy to hear your comments. If you've got questions about the project or anything you heard tonight, we'd love to hear from you. And we look forward to seeing you all, meeting you all in later this fall for public meeting number 2. Thank you.